She was supposed to be invisible, just another woman leaving a downtown hotel. No drama, no spotlight, just a normal walk into a normal New York afternoon. But within seconds of stepping off the curb, that illusion shattered hard and fast. 2 officers in plain clothes rushed her without a word of explanation. One grabbed her arm. The other swept her legs. Her back hit the pavement before she could react. The noise heels hitting concrete, cuffs snapping shut. Strangers yelling drowned out the one thing she managed to say. "Why are you doing this?" There was no answer, no ID check, no request to speak. Just a pair of cold wrists clamped in steel, and a knee pressing into her shoulder. She didn't resist. She didn't run. She barely moved. Yet to the officers, her silence was somehow a threat, and her presence, apparently, a problem. Tourists stopped and watched. One man pulled out his phone. Another hesitated, unsure whether to help or stay out of it. Hotel staff stepped outside, stunned. What they saw wasn't a disturbance. It was a wrongful arrest, unfolding in broad daylight, without cause, without due process. Later, the officers claimed she fit the description of someone involved in a nearby credit card fraud case. But there was no suspect lineup, no warrant, no warning, just racial profiling at full speed, assuming guilt without question, and using force before facts. What they didn't know was that everything, every shove, every word, every moment was being recorded. Bodycam footage, once meant to protect truth, had now become the very thing that would expose it. And what that footage showed wasn't just one bad decision. It revealed a culture of assumption, of unchecked aggression, of police misconduct masked as procedure. Even more dangerously, they had picked the wrong woman, not just because she was innocent, but because she had power. The kind that doesn't wear a badge but can revoke one. The kind that doesn't scream but investigates those who do. And the moment that footage surfaced, their careers weren't just in question. Their authority was. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a moment of clarity, a system revealing itself under pressure. Because when abuse of power happens in public and the cameras are rolling, you don't get to rewrite the narrative. You just get exposed by it. Avery Marshall knew better than to expect welcome signs when she took the job. As the newly appointed deputy chief of the Office for Police Oversight, she arrived in New York City not to make friends, but to fix what others refused to see. She didn't come with a camera crew or a press release. She came quietly, with a federal mandate and a folder full of case files documenting years of unchecked power and unresolved complaints. Her assignment audit the city's most problematic precincts, starting with Midtown South. She'd seen the reports, misfiled complaints, officers with repeat use of force incidents, internal reviews that led nowhere. Dozens of civilians, mostly Black and Latino, described eerily similar encounters. Abrupt stops, vague accusations, excessive force, no accountability. Racial profiling was never written on paper, but it was embedded in behavior, and Avery was here to trace it back to its source. What no one in the department knew, not even her own assigned liaison, was that Avery wasn't just reviewing cases from behind a desk. She was testing them from the ground. She had chosen to go undercover, not out of vanity, but necessity. If the system protected itself through appearance, she would strip hers away. No title, no ID, Just another black woman in a city that was trained not to trust her. Her plan was simple: embed herself in the rhythm of the city, walk the blocks where complaints had stacked up, stay near the intersections where routine stops spiraled into trauma, and most importantly, let the system behave naturally around her, unfiltered, unwatched. Except, of course, it was being watched. She wore a small hidden device stitched into the collar of her blazer, synced to a secure cloud. Every interaction, every word, every decision made by those in power recorded in real time. That afternoon outside the Langford Hotel was supposed to be a reconnaissance stop. She'd reviewed 3 complaints filed by guests there who'd been stopped or searched without explanation in the past 6 months. 2 were tourists. 1 was a black hotel manager who had been asked to prove he worked there. None of the officers involved were disciplined. So Avery didn't call ahead. She dressed in neutrals. She carried no purse, just her phone, a notebook, and a hotel key card she picked up to blend in. As she stepped out of the hotel, she clocked the unmarked car parked near the hydrant, its windows cracked. She noticed the 2 officers loitering across the street, one sipping coffee, the other pretending to scroll his phone. She kept walking. That's when it happened. They didn't announce themselves as police. They didn't show badges. One rushed toward her, grabbing her wrist. The other shouted, "Stop resisting," before she could say a word. Her knees hit the pavement. People screamed. Cameras came out. But it was already done. Later, when she sat handcuffed in the back of their vehicle, heart pounding but voice steady, she watched them laugh through the rear-view mirror. One of them, Officer Talon, muttered, "Probably another scammer. They love these hotels." The other, Officer Deeks, scrolled his phone. "Let's book her fast before IA gets wind." She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She'd already triggered the signal. While the officers chatted casually outside the squad car, Avery remained still, the cuffs tight behind her back, pressing into bone. Her coat sleeve had torn during the takedown, and a thin cut on her wrist had started to sting. But she didn't flinch. Instead, her focus stayed on the small, blinking light near the collar of her blazer. The signal had gone out, encrypted, geotagged, and time-stamped, sent directly to the Office for Police Oversight's Secure Operations Center. From that moment, everything that followed would be preserved as evidence: the language, the decisions, the silence, the swagger. Back at headquarters, her team was already in motion. A junior analyst named Carmen Alvarez, who had been assigned to monitor field activations, recognized the signal and froze mid-coffee. "Ma'am, we have a live code 6, she called out. Within seconds, a team was rerouting to Avery's last known coordinates. Nobody on site yet knew she was the one in the cuffs. That realization would come later and hit like a thunderclap. In the meantime, Officer Deeks opened the passenger door and climbed in. "All right. Miss, you're being detained for questioning in connection to an ongoing fraud investigation," he said, with the vague, rehearsed confidence of someone used to saying it without scrutiny. "We'll get you processed, and if everything checks out, no harm done." Avery looked at him calmly. "Do you typically slam people to the ground before checking ID?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned up the volume on the patrol radio and muttered something under his breath. She didn't push. That wasn't her job today. She was here to listen, to document, to let the system write its own indictment, one decision at a time, But the part they didn't understand, the part that would undo them later, was that she wasn't alone. As they pulled into the precinct, the mood shifted. A supervisor, Lieutenant Harris, met them at the entrance, eyebrows raised. "What have you got?" "Possible ID fraud. No wallet on her? Acting suspicious outside the Langford," Deeks said. "Deeks, who made the call?" Harris asked. "Just saw her lingering. Looked like someone we'd been briefed on. We'll sort it out." That's when Harris's radio crackled, a calm but urgent voice. "Be advised. Incoming alert from the Office of Oversight. All officers involved in incident at Langford are to remain on premises. Do not process detainee until reviewed." Deeks froze. "What the hell is that?" Harris blinked. "Repeat that." "Confirmed," the voice said. "Subject may be part of a federal observation. Stand by. Inside the precinct." Tension built fast. Someone called the deputy inspector. Another whispered about internal affairs showing up. Deeks paced. Talon leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Avery sat quietly on the bench, watching them unravel. She didn't have to raise her voice. The system had already triggered its own alarm. Down the hall, a tech officer pulled up the Bodycam footage. The playback showed everything: the takedown, the lack of ID check, the forceful commands. No Miranda rights. No communication. Just brute action based on a hunch. And when Harris saw the file tagged Code 6 Federal Monitor tied to Avery's profile, his hands trembled. "Oh my God," he whispered. "That's her." Within minutes, a black SUV pulled into the lot. Out stepped Director Lila Vaughn, the actual chief of Avery's division. She walked straight into the holding area without knocking. "Uncuff her. Now," she said. No one moved. Then she repeated it. Louder. "She's your federal monitor, the one assigned to investigate use of force protocols in this precinct. You just arrested your own auditor." The silence in the precinct cracked like glass when Director Lila Vaughn said the words out loud. "You just tackled your own federal oversight officer." The room didn't breathe. Officers at Deeks and Talon stood frozen, eyes darting between Vaughn and the woman they had just violently detained outside a luxury hotel. Avery Marshall, now calmly rolling her shoulder where the cuffs had bruised her skin. Lieutenant Harris stammered. We thought she was." "You didn't think," Vaughn cut in. "You profiled. You executed force without ID, without probable cause, and on a federal agent sent here to audit your department." Across the room, one of the internal techs was already queuing up the Bodycam footage, syncing it to Avery's encrypted cloud feed. The dual-screen display showed two angles, one from Deeks's Bodycam and the other from Avery's hidden collar cam. Together, they created a timeline impossible to deny. Talon muttered. She didn't say who she was. She didn't have to. Vaughn replied, "The law requires you to assess, not assume." Before anyone could react, the footage was uploaded to the Federal Oversight site's live stream, part of a transparency protocol Avery herself had helped design. Within 30 minutes, major outlets were already picking it up. The title read, "Bodycam Footage. Federal Auditor Slammed by NYPD in Unprovoked Arrest." Social media exploded. One clip showed Avery calmly asking, "Why are you doing this just before being slammed to the pavement?" Another captured Deeks joking. Let's just say she matched the energy, while she sat silently in the back of the squad car. Within an hour, It had 1.8 million views and was trending under abuse of power, Bodycam justice, and NYPD under review. Back at NYPD headquarters, pressure built like a storm. Deputy Commissioner Owen Brandt, one of the most powerful men in city law enforcement, called an emergency meeting. "We need to contain this," he barked. "No statements until I clear it." But Vaughn had already anticipated the play. She stepped to the podium at City Hall that evening, beside Avery, and addressed the press directly. This wasn't just misconduct. It was a test, and the department failed. We sent in one woman. What she uncovered in 24 minutes has been happening here for decades. Meanwhile, Internal Affairs launched full investigations, not only into Deeks and Talon, but into every unresolved complaint tied to their unit. And that's when the next twist dropped. Buried in Deeks' patrol vehicle system was a disconnected hard drive unlinked from NYPD servers. Avery's tech team retrieved it during a forensic sweep. Inside, over 48 unsanctioned bodycam clips, including footage of previous stops that had never been reported. Some showed minors being threatened. Others captured falsified justifications after arrests. Most were tagged "Do not upload" in metadata. This wasn't negligence, it was a pattern. And it implicated more than 2 officers. It traced up the chain of command. The final blow landed when Avery submitted a sealed memo to the U.S. Department of Justice. In it, she named 4 senior officers, including Deputy Commissioner Brandt, as individuals who knowingly suppressed internal complaints, altered timestamps, and shielded known abusers through bureaucratic misdirection. What began as a mistaken identity stop had evolved into a full-blown civil rights investigation and a blueprint for how systemic abuse protects itself unless confronted. By the end of the week, Deeks and Talon were suspended without pay. Brandt was placed on administrative leave. A citywide review of use of force policy was announced. And Avery, she wasn't hiding anymore. She walked back into the precinct, same heels, same poise, same silent message. "I didn't flinch when you tried to break me. You flinched when the truth surfaced." Amera. 2 officers were suspended. Internal Affairs was swamped with media requests and subpoenas, but the bigger problem was just beginning to emerge, because the footage wasn't the most damaging evidence. The culture behind it was Avery's team, now backed by the DOJ, began combing through the internal review logs of Precinct 12. What they found was a pattern too deliberate to be coincidence: dozens of misconduct complaints categorized as unsubstantiated within 48 hours, many without interviews or review. Several officers had repeat allegations of excessive force and racial profiling, and the review officer on almost all of them, Deputy Commissioner Owen Brandt. Brandt had served 19 years in the department. He was known as a power broker, a man who cleaned up messes before they hit headlines. But he wasn't just ignoring problems. He was burying them. Avery didn't go public. Not yet. Instead, she let the systems work the way they were meant to. The first move came quietly. A sealed memo was delivered to the DOJ's Civil Rights Division with 14 attached complaints, previously closed without follow-up. Next to each was a time-stamped reference to suppressed bodycam footage and manually edited reports. 3 of those reports were signed off by Brandt, citing non-actionable suspicion and compliant detention protocol. The evidence was enough to trigger a federal investigation into civil rights violations under color of law. and for the first time, the system turned inward. Then came the public fallout. Brandt, sensing pressure, went on live television. "The incident was unfortunate," he said, "but I stand by the professionalism of my officers and the internal process. It was classic damage control. Vague. Measured, performative." But hours later, the mayor's office released a statement confirming Brandt had been placed on indefinite administrative leave, pending federal review. The mayor didn't call it discipline, but everyone knew what it meant. The city was stepping back, and Brandt was falling alone. Meanwhile, Avery walked into the next public oversight hearing with a folder in her hand and clarity in her voice. "I didn't come to New York to embarrass your department," she said to the board. "I came because the complaints didn't stop, because people said they were afraid, and because the numbers told a story your leadership refused to read." She handed the folder to the chairperson. Inside copies of 11 complaints, including one from a black teenager stopped 3 times in 1 month without a ticket. The audio clip attached had a voice saying, "He looks jumpy." "That's enough." The chair's expression hardened. "And who cleared this, Brandt?" Avery said, "Every time." There was no shouting, no accusation, just silence that filled the room like water rising in a sinking ship. And then, the final move. Avery submitted a policy recommendation, backed by the Federal Oversight Division. All Bodycam footage must auto-upload to an external third-party cloud server within 20 minutes of any use of force incident. Any officer with more than 3 misconduct allegations in a 12-month period is automatically flagged for public review. Civilian Review Board has full authority to override internal classifications of unfounded complaints. When the board voted, it wasn't close, unanimous. That night, Brandt cleared out his office. He didn't give a farewell speech. He didn't file an appeal, because deep down, he knew the game he'd rigged for years had finally reset, and he was on the wrong side of it. As for Avery, she never raised her voice. She never called for revenge. She just waited, recorded, and reminded the system what accountability actually looks like. And it listened.